You're listening to the 49 Carats podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Monday, December 23rd, the last 49K show before Christmas. All right, so I'm joined here with my Monday co-host, Weston, who is very much in the holiday spirit. You got the Santa hat and everything. I love it. I don't know. I used to have Santa hats. I should check and see if I have any still, but it would have been great if I did, because then I'd be rocking it too. But it looks great. I like the spirit.
Thank God for this headset, because this hat is so massive. It would be down to here, but at least it pinches in here. Okay. But it's the perks of having children. You always have a Santa hat lying around in a pinch, and I literally thought of this, I don't know, 12 minutes ago. I was like, hey, maybe I should wear a Santa hat.
Brilliant. I love it. And quite honestly, we do need the holiday spirit right now to get us in a good mood, because the 49ers definitely have not provided that for us. Appreciate everyone that's tuning in the live chat live, and then everyone, all the audio listeners as well. Appreciate all of you. It hasn't been the football season that we were expecting, but overall the year, can't complain. Personal lives, love all of you that tune in and appreciate all of you. So thank you for rocking with us. But Weston, unfortunately, we do have to talk about the 49ers, because this is a 49ers show after all. I heard. And we got to talk about the latest loss, and that was against the Dolphins. I went into this thinking, the 49ers, this probably was their, well, I don't want to say their most winnable game remaining, because they still play the Cardinals. But, I looked at it like this. I was like, the 49ers probably looking at this game, and they were officially eliminated from the playoffs before the game even started. So there's not much to play for at this point, in which case draft order now becomes kind of important, right? That's something to look forward to. So in my mind, I was like, the 49ers will definitely win this game. Because that's just what they do. Like, if they can get a better draft pick, they win instead. But that didn't end up happening. And it was just the same old kind of thing with this team, right? It's like games where they've played two types of games this season: games where they've been in it the entire time and kind of collapse at the end, or games where they just haven't been in it at all and they don't deserve to win at any point in the game. And so this one was kind of like a game where they very much were in it throughout the game. I mean, the Dolphins, very much a struggling team as well. And, it fell apart. It fell apart in the end. And I think we could talk about some of those things. I do want to address something. Sorry to, get on a soapbox here, Weston, but I do want to address something, because yesterday I did my post-game live, and I named it, at least live. The audio listeners won't know this, but I named the live version Brock Purdy, chokes at the end versus Dolphins, right?
I'm sure that went over well.
That was a very reactionary reaction. As I'm a fan. I never, pretend to not be a fan or be better than any other fan. I'm very much reactionary. Sometimes that does come out. And so I think at that point it did. And that was me not watching the replay over. I think at that point I turned the TV off, in fact, to get ready to do the live show. And so I didn't watch the replay. I didn't notice that, he pretty much got blasted while trying to get that pass off, which, I think now we can all look back on and say, obviously, that's why the pass was short. That's why it ended up being intercepted. So I just want to clear that up, because, I think some people were upset, and I was, honestly a little upset with myself for being a little reactionary about that. But you know what? Like, at the same time, I'm very frustrated with this team being in it at the end, having chances at game-winning drives, and ultimately failing at that. And I'm not blaming all of that on Brock Purdy. I think this offense entirely has been, very disappointing this season. And I think, my initial reaction was very much a product of that frustration. But I want to get your thoughts, Weston, on what kind of went through your head as the 49ers were, getting ready to take that drive that very much could have been a game-winning drive, and what were your reactions to the result of it?
I mean, I, like any other fan, probably wanted to see the game-winning drive, not even just for the win, but for the silence of because we know all the stats, right? Like there's, Kyle Shanahan can't play from, can't win from behind. Brock Purdy hasn't led fourth quarter comebacks and yada, yada, yada. You just wanted to see a little bit of that. I think everything, and we've been talking about it for weeks, Steph, the last few weeks, everything has been, in our eyes, more geared towards momentum building for 2025, right? So was there something that you can see at the end of the game that was like, all right, this is all just a fluke, right? Like this is just crazy and weird. Like it's still there. They can still go win a football game. And to your point earlier, like I thought they were in this game. Like I thought they were playing. I thought they were trying. I thought they didn't like carry this defeated attitude going into the game. Like I really thought they were putting it out there, and I was proud of the effort. Just not necessarily the end of the result, but going into that final drive, I don't know if I necessarily agree if he's hit or not, if that ball's completed. I have a totally different perception of where he was going with the ball in the first place. Like I've
seen other people have that opinion.
I think he was going to Juwan. I don't think he was going to Debo. I think that's that middle window that he likes so much. Neither here nor there. He was hit. It clearly disrupted the throw. Where it was going to end up, we don't know. But that last drive, I just wanted to see Brock be able to do something, right? Like, because what's the lingering question going into the offseason? Is he a $30 million, a $40 million, a $50 million, a $60 million quarterback, and blah, 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 blah. You wanted to see some of those questions answered, and I still feel like we have less answers than questions at this point in time. And that's all I cared about. It wasn't the result, right? Because I, like you, were like, well, at this point, might as well get a better draft pick, right? Might as well something like this. I'm from the East Coast, right? So this is like New York Jet shit, right? Like you'd be playing for the number one pick overall and then win the final game of the season to make sure you're picking third, not even second, third, and like out of the quarterback conversation. That's what it felt like, it could possibly be. I just wanted to see everything I wanted to see was momentum continue towards 2025. And we didn't get a resolution to that. And I don't know if that's Brock's fault. I think it's just a slew of things that have plagued this team entire year. Like we didn't get to see him step into the ball, to make the big throw, to do anything. Yeah. It felt like he was under duress the majority of this game.
Yeah, and I think that's it, right? Like I want to have a clear answer on Brock this season, and I feel like the way the season has gone, like a part of it, it's almost like he hasn't got a fair shot to, I guess, prove himself. But at the same time, if injuries and, the guys who you have available, if the offensive line, if all those things impact you that much, then in a way it is somewhat of an answer. But I still don't think, like, I don't want to say it's not fair, but yeah, it's been difficult, I think, to kind of parse what Brock Purdy is and in this offense. And I think it was the same last season, but it was for different reasons. Last season, it was like because offense was so good and everyone was like clicking on all cylinders. It was like, okay, how much of this is because of Brock? This season, it's like it's kind of the same, but the opposite, because it's like this whole offense, looks like complete shit. And we can't figure out how much of that is because of Brock. I do know that I think at the very least, we know Brock isn't going to be I don't want to say he's not the solution. I just want to say that he's not the reason. He can't be the sole reason that they are going to like be a good offense. I think that's all we know right now.
And that's, I think we've known that since day one. He's not Josh Allen. He's not Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
He's not Joe Burrow. And I'm strategically leaving Patrick Mahomes' name out of this because what I've been tired of and what I kind of alluded to, like the end of our last show about I can't wait till we have this conversation in the offseason about Brock is like everybody wants to immediately go, oh, well, he's nothing without his weapons. Okay, so what quarterback that is not insanely mobile is? Because I can tell you right now, yes, I know the Kansas City Chiefs have one loss, and there's a lot to be said for that. But they're televised a lot, right? Like, and you can watch a lot of their games, and I do, and there is nothing about their play offensively that says they are elite on the offensive side, right? Like they are the benefactor of having an offense that doesn't turn the ball over a lot, a defense that has been studly the entire season, and then just I think what's lacking from Brock that people are really looking for, and they're not just calling that, like, show me the 2 plays a game that you make that puts you in that top 7 to 10 quarterback discussion, right? And you don't see that. But let's not penalize this guy for the fact that he's barely had his starting left tackle all year, the former offensive player of the year, your number 1 wide receiver. Like, Brock, the 49ers aren't a 6-win team because of Brock Purdy. He's a part of it, but candidly, they're like outside of like 3 players, everybody's played below their pay grade, right? Like we can go up and down this team. Like there are so many contributing factors. I think what we're all saying, and it's fine, is that Brock at this point doesn't feel like the Michael Jordan that can elevate everybody around him. But I don't think any of us ever believed that he was. Like, I think we wanted to, but like,
were we projecting our hopes and dreams on this guy?
No, like it's just a clear eyeball test, and say I still don't think you need an elite quarterback to win the Super Bowl. You need a quarterback that is very good, but you need the complementary pieces, and that's what he is. That's what he is. Like, I don't know if there's other quarterbacks that could come in and do what Kyle Shanahan wants from them. And that's the rub, right? Like, it's not like if you traded for Josh Allen tomorrow, like whose offense do you run? The one that Josh Allen's been highly successful in, or Kyle Shanahan's offense? And the answer is going to be Kyle Shanahan's offense. And we have no idea how Josh Allen's going to look in that. No idea, right? Like, you don't know. We'll debate this the entire time. I think the original question, it was more about like final drive expectations and this enigma that continues to be Brock Purdy that we just don't have our answers to.
Yeah, so I think that's been the frustrating thing because I want to have the answers. I very much would have wanted Brock to lead a game-winning drive and be like, okay, like, cool. We can say he deserves.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, and I think it's just because all of this like contract talk, I'm getting very much mixed into it too, and like basing my opinion very much on that and how much he should be paid and all that. And I don't know. Once that happens, maybe me and everyone else included will have a clear head on Brock, and we can just, I don't know, see him as the leader and quarterback of this team. But right now it's like, yeah, we're still trying to just figure some things out. But yeah, I agree. It's not all on Brock. And again, like, you know, just kind of wanted to clarify that I don't think it's all on Brock.
Here's what I want your listeners to think about is we're going to spend the next few weeks talking about lessons learned, right, of the season and what can we look forward to in 2025. We all rave about Brock Purdy, the person, right? Brock Purdy, the leader, Brock Purdy, the teammate, Brock Purdy, the hard worker. Those are all things that can't be taught, right? When we talk about things that can't be taught, speed, height, leadership, like those things can't be taught. Those are like innate. And he checks a lot of these boxes. What I am really excited for is this is a year everything has gone right for Brock Purdy since he's been in the league, right? And the things that are gone wrong, you can point to the fluke play in Philly with a UCL. But for the most part, everything, the chips have always fallen right for him. Here's a little adversity. Here's a little reminder that Brock, like, you are not blessed with all of God's gifts, right? Like some of these elite quarterbacks that we talked are, but you are blessed with probably a work ethic and a mentality that most people would covet. You faced adversity this year. So I would use that throw as an example that we're talking about with interception, the tip ball to George Kittle that should have been a touchdown, right? In the first half, things like that would change the game. That just is the reminder to Brock, you have to be an inch better in practice. You have to be an inch better in your preparation. You have to be an inch better in those things. And I am excited to see how a kid of his like mentality takes on that challenge. I'm excited for that. And I think listeners and fans should be as well, because he's not Drew Lock, first or second round quarterback that like you look at any adversity, you're like, this guy's out. You know what I mean? You could see it on their face. Yeah. Like he's not that guy. I want to see how he pops out of this. I'm excited for that. Like he's the quarterback. Like I don't care what anyone says. He's the quarterback.
Yeah, no, forward. I mean, absolutely.
I'm excited for it.
Absolutely. And that's why, like, I think there's a lot of nuance in, as always, like in the quarterback conversation. Like I could be disappointed in Brock while at the same time knowing and being fine with the fact that he is going to be this team's quarterback. He is going to get, a deal, an extension. I'm not on the don't sign him to an extension. Signing him to an extension is a mistake kind of thing. There are teams giving far bigger deals to far worse quarterbacks than Brock. I mean, Brock is. I'm not concerned about Brock getting a deal and being the quarterback of this team, but I do think what we do know, Brock does need a level of, I guess, stability around him in the offense. To be able to be the game manager, non-derogatory, by the way, the game manager that we know he could be and we've seen before. So let's talk about some of those things, right? And before we do, just want to acknowledge this super chat from 49ers Throwback. The most frustrating part was the penalties. Yeah, I mean, the penalties in this game were atrocious. I mean, 11 penalties. They had more penalty yards than rushing yards in this game. 90 yards from penalties, 81 rushing yards total in this game. It's just the same thing over and over. This team shooting itself in the foot. I think, we saw a couple of penalties from, someone like Ricky Pearsall, who's making rookie mistakes, unfortunately, but we're also seeing mistakes from veterans, guys who have been on this team, who have been starting for a really long time, that make, kind of the same mistakes. And so, man, it's just been an extremely frustrating season, because it just seems like whenever anything goes right, whenever it feels like they get a positive play, you're kind of waiting for the flag. You're like, where is it? Because like it's too good to be true, right? So that was definitely a big part of this loss for the 49ers, as well as the lack of the running game. That stat as well is very much indicative of the 49ers not having a running game yesterday. Patrick Taylor Jr., who was the only running back we saw getting snaps, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think we saw Izzy Abanikanda getting any snaps in this one. And Patrick Taylor handled 8 carries, only 24 yards. So that was a part of this offense that was very much missing. And we know that's a huge part of this offense and what typically they're able to do and how they kind of stack plays. Like you need those run plays to stack other plays on top of, and that's something that they didn't have. So, and Brock was the leading rusher for the 49ers with 26 yards.
26 yards. Your quarterback.
26 yards. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's funny though, because you joke about like more penalty yards than rushing yards. When I saw the box score afterwards, I was like, they had 81 yards rushing. Like I was almost impressed, because I'm like, I think I can recall off the top of my head after watching that game like 3 run plays, right? Like it just felt like all they were doing was throwing the ball, like not even an attempt at a run game. But that's where we are, right? That's where we are right now, is your 4th string running back, right? You got a guy who played left tackle in college who takes his first ever, has been a guard in this league for 2+ years and is taking left tackle snaps. Like it's just chaos when you're at the end of the season and you're floundering and you're not playing for anything. And I feel for the Niners a little bit because this whole week preparation was probably all about like win or go home, win or go home, win or go home. And then you find out literally before kickoff that you're going home no matter what, right? Like kind of deflating to go out there. But that's why I was actually proud of the team because it felt like they were still trying to give a winning effort. It did feel that way. Execution has been as poor as it's been all season, but it didn't like the leaders were flying around. Like Fred Warner was flying around the football field. Talanoa Hufanga was flying around. Drake Greenlaw was flying around. I thought Nick Bosa, while he didn't show up big in the rush, pass rush, like I thought he was actually really good in the run against the run and played a decent game for himself. Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, like the big names felt like they were playing for something a little bit. And that's like telling to me. They didn't look like the ones quitting. It just was, you mentioned rookie mistakes from Ricky Pearsall. And then of course, Tony Romo and Jim Nance get this game, right? Because
I almost felt bad for them.
Any penalty on the 49ers is going to be glorified when it's Tony Romo talking, as knowledgeable as he is. And I do actually very much enjoy him as a commentator. I think he brings a great piece to more casual football fans. But at the end of the day, it's going to get more glorified, especially with his receivers. Like, just get on the ball. I don't understand. Yeah. Like, just get on the ball, Rook, But yeah, that was tough. The penalties were tough because they're drive killers. They're drive killers and they're drive extenders. That's what they are.
Yeah, for sure. And to go back to my point about the penalties and like veterans making, these silly mistakes. Jake Brendel, his 9th penalty yesterday, and he's definitely one of the people that I want to talk about. And, I actually just want to talk about the offensive line. I think that's a huge issue with this team. And I think it kind of starts and ends with Jake Brendel because he is the center. He holds a lot of responsibility for that offensive line, for the protections that get called. And so if he's not on his game, like it could impact very much a lot of things. Right. And I think that's what we've kind of seen this season, that Jake Brendel has very much been a disappointment this season. And I think it's gotten to a point where, you have to move off of Jake Brendel after this year. I think is something we've learned. And when we talk about lessons learned, I think that one is a big one to me. And overall, like the offensive line philosophy of this team, and I can't really pinpoint what it is. It's not so much like you can say that it's not prioritizing offensive line. And I think when we say that specifically, it's not prioritizing it like early in the draft. Like just because the 49ers drafted 2 offensive linemen last season, like that's not prioritizing me. They drafted one in the 3rd round, and thankfully, he ended up being good enough to be a starter in his first season. And by the way, that was only because of injury that we got to see that, before the season even started. Otherwise, I don't think we would have seen Dominic Pooney. But with the way this season has gone with all the injuries, maybe we would have. But you get my point. Like, I think that's kind of the this, we're just going to draft, a guy we like later. Like, we'll develop him behind the scenes. It'll be fine. Like, it'll be fine. And then we'll get in some offensive linemen, from free agency that, are kind of castaways, and we'll develop them in-house and they'll work out. The scheme will make them better. So all those things. I think literally the only exception to the 49ers not prioritizing offensive line or undervaluing is Trent Williams. Like, obviously they've allocated a lot of money towards Trent Williams, and, when they made that trade, thankfully they didn't have to give up much for him to make that happen. But he's been the saving grace of the conversation or like any criticism of the offensive line. But he hasn't been here this season, right? Like he's dealing with injury, personal things. And so that, I think, has amplified what the rest of this offensive line has looked like this season. And it's not good. Yeah. It's not good. So, like, I think this season has taught us that the offensive line, like you have to prioritize the offensive line, especially if you've made the decision, and I think the 49ers have, that Brock Purdy is going to be your guy. Like it's a disservice to him and your entire offense, quite frankly, to continue to trot out these offensive lines that make the job a little more difficult, for your quarterback, right? And for everyone involved, like it makes it more difficult for. So I just hope that that's kind of the lesson that's been learned. And I hope that we do see a concerted effort to improve the offensive line this offseason, particularly center. I think they target a free agent, most likely. And hopefully like they bring in some competition for Colton McKivitz as well.
Yep. So I agree. Both sides of the ball, offensive line, defensive line, need to be prioritized heavily in this draft and in free agency. What are when the 49ers were roaring, what were they known as? A bully. Well, this team doesn't bully anybody. And what does Kyle Shanahan want to do more so than any coach in the league? He wants to run the football. Like, he doesn't want to really throw the ball. Like, when he throws the ball, he wants to dial up home runs, right? And then he wants to run the ball for possession and kill clock and control the ball game. Which is the right philosophy, in my opinion. But that being said, you can't do that without the line. Forget that you're about to pay your quarterback, I don't know, let's be conservative here and say $45 million a year, right? Even if it's like best case scenario, and you would want to protect that investment. But your best player at that position, who just came off an off year, is going to be 37 years old. You can't really move on from Trent Williams next year unless he wants to move on from playing football, because you are so far under that contract the way that it was just restructured to get his money. Like, there's so much dead money, it paralyzes you. Like, you need him to play ball. And I agree. I think it starts with center. It's quarterback of what they do, from protections at the line, etc. I do think you prioritize a veteran before a rook in like a Kyle Shanahan type offense. And then you got to go get younger, across the board on the offensive line. I don't think the line has been as horrendous as we expected it to be, because I thought it was going to be awful coming into the year outside of Trent Williams. Obviously, Pooney's been a huge surprise. I don't think McKivitz I think he's been what we've expected. No better, no worse. I'm just looking for upside. And I think you can get upside from a younger, cheaper player. Like, I think you could. Like, to me, some of the best offensive linemen that have ever played this game, they're not first-round draft picks, right? Like, that is a chip on the shoulder, muddy, dirty, physical position. Like, I want guys who have been overlooked their entire life. Like, pull 7 undrafted rookies out of next year's class that all play offensive line and give them a shot to crack. Like, that's how these guys, make it.
No, but Weston, that would
that would freak
I know
everybody
where
the fuck out.
I know where you're saying, but this fan base would.
I want grinders.
I want grinders too, but sometimes you can find grinders in the first round.
You can.
I mean, at least you can find uber talented guys.
But I can also find you a lot of first round offensive linemen that are not in this league anymore that weren't drafted more than 2 or 3 years ago.
That is true as well. And so I don't think their philosophy will change a whole lot. I think there's something specific that they look for in their offensive linemen in terms of physical traits. And they make that work, right? So it's not always about being the highly coveted coming out of college player. It's about scheme fit in particular. And I think they'll continue to do that. I do still think they could do that while also, finding the best guy that fits your team. That's also very talented. Like there just has to be a way they can make that work. So, that's what I'm hoping they do.
I think to appease fans, you just got to take shots at the position. Even if you swing and miss, show us that you're prioritizing. Otherwise, how do you take it serious, right? Like, how good how valuable? Look at Saquon Barkley, right? I was told he had no value in New York because he was playing behind this porous offensive line. Now he is possibly Offensive Player of the Year, if not MVP in Philadelphia, playing behind an offensive line, right? Like, you have the pieces back there that, forget the quarterback, that you want to prioritize. You're invested in Christian McCaffrey. You're going to get him rested for basically an entire year. Do you not want to have somebody there that can do something to keep him clean to the second level and let him do what he does? To be taken seriously, I need to see an investment in the line.
Yeah, exactly. That's all we're saying. And as Leon Sandcastle in the comments says, so many perfect offensive line scheme fits in this draft. And yeah, I think I am hearing that this draft there are some good offensive linemen, as there is defensive linemen, edge as well, which are some needs for the 49ers too. So again, the draft pick, very much important for the 49ers in these next couple of games. They currently hold the 11th overall pick in the draft, and with 2 games remaining, and the 49ers have the Lions and the Cardinals left on the schedule, very much possible they can crack the top 10. We'll be kind of rooting for that. But yeah, on the topic of offensive line, I kind of just want to segue really quickly to some injury updates, because as we know, there were a number of injuries to offensive linemen yesterday that made the offensive line kind of a little shakier at the end of the game, especially. So left guard Aaron Banks, he is dealing with an MCL injury. He will miss the last 2 games. And I just want to say what you want about Aaron Banks. And I think we knew the writing was on the wall. I don't think the 49ers were going to sign him to a contract, but he was a free agent. He's an impending free agent after this season. So that's a bummer. I hope that's not a long-term injury for him. And I hope it doesn't impact his, ability to get a deal out there. Cause I always hate to see that for players, especially ones that are impending free agents. So that's tough for Banks. Jalen Moore, their left tackle, who's been filling in for Trent Williams, and I would say quite admirably, actually. He exited with a quad injury, and he will also miss the last 2 games for the 49ers. Not sure the severity of quad. When you hear quad, the worst possible thing is the injury. Not Colt McKivitz. God, what our last McGlinchey. The injury he had, suffered while he was still with the 49ers. See, that's worst case scenario. So hopefully it's nothing like that for Jalen Moore. I think he's also a free agent after the season, or does he have another year? I'll have to double check. But yeah, I'll have to look at the 49ers free agent list. I need to write it at the back of my hand. But yeah, I hope they keep him around, because I do like him. He's been very solid for this team.
He is season. A free agent. He is an unrestricted.
He is a free agent. Yeah, that's kind of a bummer. I hope they find Williams dealing with an ankle injury. He's also going to miss the last 2 games. That was confirmed by Kyle Shanahan today, and then a couple of other injuries. So you got Spencer Burford. I'll just get to that. They're awaiting an MRI, calf injury for him. So he filled in as well at, where was he? Was he playing? He was playing tackle. Yeah, I was playing tackle. Because usually he'd come in at guard, but Banks got hurt first. So they put in Nick Zakel at guard, and Spencer Burford came in and it was playing tackle. So yeah, it was a bit of a hodgepodge there. And then you got Dre Greenlaw, who only played a couple of snaps in this game before needing to exit. He was dealing with some calf soreness, and you don't want to mess around with that. So I know that was something he was very upset about. Obviously, I think he really wanted to come back and play, and the 2 games he's come in and his time was cut short. So they're awaiting an MRI for Greenlaw, and yeah, I think it's likely that he gets shut down, but no final decision has been made on Greenlaw quite yet. And then Jair Brown dealing with an ankle injury. He's day-to-day. The good news in all this is that Isaac Guerrero is expected to return to practice. So we could expect a better run game from the 49ers in the following week, hopefully. But yeah, I mean, all these injuries, I think like whoever has a 49ers voodoo doll, just stop already. All right.
Yeah.
Like we've seen enough. All right. We don't need any more of this.
I mean, this is what week 16 in the NFL looks like when you're a 6-win team, like there's usually something that's contributing to that. And you pull it up week after week, right? Like the injury, this is actually pretty short compared to some of the other lists that we've seen before, but most of the names that were on previous lists still ain't back yet. So that's how that goes too.
Yeah. So Kyle did mention that, they're probably going to have to pick up some offensive linemen from some other team's practice squad to, probably elevate them for Sunday's game. So a bad situation gets worse. And that just that makes me nervous for Brock too. Cause it's just putting him under more duress for these following 2 games. Like I said, the 49ers play the Lions this upcoming week. So they have a pretty solid defense, even with all the injuries they've faced. So yeah, I mean, I hope Brock doesn't suffer anything in the next couple games, and he can come out of this unscathed, even with the offensive line situation. But I think at this time, let's do a quick 49K Player of the Week nomination. And I don't think this is going to be very long, right?
No, it won't.
Weston, yeah,
it won't be.
I figured as much. So, but we'll rattle off a few here. I think I'll let you go first. I don't think, like I said, it's a long list, so we probably got the same person here, and someone we probably didn't even expect would make it, right?
Yeah. Jesus, I can't remember the last time we said this name in a positive manner in the 2024 season, but I'll go out and say Deebo Samuel. 5 carries, 25 yards, 7 catches, 96 yards, right? I mean, what are you talking about? 125 total yards from scrimmage in a game, got into the end zone. That's a big time game, right? When you're influencing it from many different factors. Where I'm perplexed is I didn't need to see this game, right? I didn't need to see this performance for Deebo. We talked about show me more Ricky, show me more Jacob, show me less of Deebo. So I am wondering, I personally think, and I've said this on your show for a while, Steph, that he's back in 2025. I don't think he's going anywhere. I think he's part of the crew. I think he's part of the plan. So this was either affirmation of that, hey, you guys wanted less Deebo. We wanted to show you that what you've been seeing. Because again, going into this game with the game plan, it was control your own destiny. You got to win your game and you got to get help. Right. So that was the game plan going in. That's what the scripted plays are. And then you find out literally 15 minutes before kickoff, Rams win, you go home. That's just it's unfortunate that it works out this way. So it was either the statement game to say Deebo is still the part. And in all fairness, when the ball was in his hand, he looked physical. What I say, north and south. When he's going north and south, it looks good. Or this was audition tape for the rest of the league for Kyle to be like, come get him. Somebody offer me something so we can move on from him. But my gut tells me I think this is the most workload we'll see for Deebo the rest of the season. I think this was more of Kyle doing his buddy a solid and giving him a redemption opportunity on what the season's been. But he didn't disappoint.
He didn't disappoint. And I will say, it didn't feel as forced as the week prior.
It felt like natural flow of the game where his touches were coming, for sure.
Exactly. And if I told you that the previous 5 games, the total yards from scrimmage for Deebo were 21 yards, 0 touchdowns, 21 yards, 0 touchdowns, 20 yards, 0 touchdowns, 35 yards, 0 touchdowns, 19 yards, 0 touchdowns, would you believe me that he'd then be a player of the week in week 16? Yeah, because I wouldn't have thought that either.
Sounds like a healthy scratch to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, get that man off the field. But yeah, no, I mean, he delivered, and I saw a lot of people frustrated by the fact that why now? Like, okay, we're eliminated from the playoffs, and you decide to have this type of performance. I get that. That is definitely very frustrating. At the same time, it was nice to see, just to know that he still had that in him. And I think like a part of us did know because he still looked good in like the returns and things like that. But what was missing, I think, in the offense was just the missed tackles, yards after the catch. So he definitely, it looked like a way more concerted effort to stay upright and get a little extra. So yeah, 7 catches, 5 of which went for first downs. The 96 receiving yards, the touchdown, 93 of his 96 receiving yards came after the catch, 6 missed tackles forced. And yeah, you mentioned the rushes as well. The rushes, you know, is not very impressive, but like I said, no, the run game as a whole was not impressive in this game. And, you know, he ended up being the highest graded 49er from Sunday's game. So, I mean, like I said, it's good to see. I do think that Kyle is going to mess around and keep Debo. Even though I still think like, I just think it's time. It's time to evolve past the need of Debo and what he brings you, because also I just feel like this, like, defenses know what it is. They they expect it. You know, there's only so much that you can do with him, and I think it's run its course. So, you know, but for the sake of 49K Player of the Week nominations, Debo definitely deserves to be in that conversation.
Yeah. And I know people, Debo contractors, might want to say, well, it was the Dolphins, and they, you know, yeah, they were only a 6-week team coming into this, but they were also playing for their playoff future. You know what I mean? Right? Like, their season's not over yet. Like, they still have something to play for. They have a little bit more control over their destiny. So it wasn't like we, you know, you're going up against a team that's just looking to throw in the towel and get this season out of here, where Debo's looking physical again. Like, he was still doing those things. I am on the side that I do not still think it is time to move on from Debo. I've always said I need to see it in a different vein. I need to see a little less reliancy upon it, a little less, more like we saw here. To your point, stuff just felt like it was more in the flow of the game. Like, even on some of his receptions, don't know if he was the number one read, right? Didn't feel like that. Didn't feel forced.
Right.
You know, like, you still need him in the screen game, but you need him north and south immediately. You know, there was the rushing game. Yeah, he averaged 5 yards a carry. Was it spectacular? Not by any means, but you know what he didn't do? He didn't lose yards on every time he touched the ball in the backfield on a jet sweep or handed to him 7 yards deep out of the shotgun. It felt and looked a little bit more convincing than what the rest of the season has been.
Yeah, and in this comment from KJ, better to get rid of older players before the age truly shows and you're stuck with them. That's all it is. Like, and I think Debo's like teetering at that point where, you know, he deals with injuries every season at this point, and those injuries have like a multi-week lasting effect after the fact as well. So like, your body's not able to like bounce back the same way that it used to. So I think that's what the 49ers need to do. Yes, maybe he still has some juice left in the tank, but I don't want him to be around when there is none left, right? Because then what do you do then? Yeah, that's my thing. But yeah, getting back to more nominees here, I'm going to go with George Kittle. And it's like, it's so funny because like, I feel like we say this a lot. Like, George Kittle has great games all the time, and a lot of them feel like quiet great games. Like, he had 8 catches, 106 yards, 71 of those came after the catch. And he was wide open for a touchdown that probably it should have been a touchdown, but that got tipped at the line. So it could have been a better day for him. But I mean, we could say this every single week. Like, the man has just been so important to this offense. oftentimes it feels like he's the only guy that is giving it his all on every play on offense, right? So, just very much appreciative of George Kittle and his weekly contributions to this team, and want to make sure that we highlight that here as well.
Yeah, George, I love you. I could have really used a touchdown from you in the semifinals of fantasy last week, and a 5-point loss. That touchdown would have meant the world in your production. And again, this is just symbolic of the 49ers season. They had red zone opportunities, right? Like they had opportunities, and right before the half, and that opportunity, obviously the ball gets batted down at the line of scrimmage, and George is standing there wide open. That could have been the difference maker, but. Not to sound redundant, because we talk about it definitely for the last few weeks since he's exploded back onto the scene and been a focal point of their offense, is you can't get wrong. You're not wrong when you incorporate 85 into the passing game. He does special things with the ball in his hand. I mean, I would say that he brings the same juice that Debo brings. It's the same thing we're talking about. It's get the ball in his hands, let him get north and south. They don't shy away from contact. And when they run over somebody and get that extra 5, 7, 10 yards, it just adds this layer of excitement to the sideline, to teammates, to the fans, to everything. It's how they earn their yards after catch, versus maybe somebody who just pulls away from everybody, right? They do it in a very physical manner. George he's a blessing to all things football. We openly joke on this show about how we will both have meltdowns when the day comes that he decides he no longer wants to play this beautiful, beautiful game of football. But yeah, week after week, and this is what it's supposed to be. We went weeks without mentioning George's name, without saying like, why is he not more involved? Like, what happened here? But you hear Romo and you hear Nance and you hear the commentators week after week gush over the guy. He is a future Hall of Famer. Solidify it. You'd love to get him a Super Bowl, so there's no questions that could be asked around this. But the guy is truly an elite football player, an elite human being, elite everything. So much fun to watch. And he just did it again. We're not just nominating him because we love him. We nominate him because he produces, and he just continues to do such.
Yep, right on. Now, that's it. That's my list of player of the week nominees. But
I have one more, believe it or not.
Okay, you have one more. Yeah, I was like, there's some that were like kind of fringe. I was like on the fence whether or not to make them nominees or
fringe or cringe.
Give them.
There was some of both. There was some of both in this game.
Cringe is for the players to put on notice. That's but
I'll be quick.
Go ahead. Yeah.
D. Winters. Like what I see from him, and this was a high volume game for him as well. I think 51 snaps. That's got to be his most of the year if we go back and look through it. And this is what we've been asking for. I still have no idea why Dre Greenlaw's on the football field right now. Like, I know what he does, like, emotionally, but this was my concern, is like a rush back, and then it just parlays into his body's been compensating for that injury for so long. Like, it's not fully, the injury might be healed, but the body hasn't caught up with it, and it's gonna spurn other things. But to see D. Winters play, he fits the bill to what they want to do. He flies around the football field, east to west. He comes on a mission, right? Like he comes looking to deliver the blow. He just feels like he could be a 49er linebacker for a long time. He just needed to get the opportunity. And in seeing him in a complete game, he was the highest rated defensive player, the highest rated cover grade. Like, he does the things that we've expected 49er linebackers to do since 2019, right? Cover, thud, be all over the field, and he fits that build. And I thought he's not playing mistake-free ball, by any means, but all the promising signs are there, and all things that are like, just this guy just needs reps. That's all he needs is experience, and it'll come to fruition for him.
Yeah, I think that's a huge silver lining. And yeah, D. Winters was on my list. So that was the one where I couldn't decide, right, whether to give him flowers or nominate him. I decided to just put him on my flowers list, but very much not mad that you made this nomination, because I do see the silver lining with Winters. And we talk about the fact that with the season being what it is, and obviously not playing for playoff contention at this point, you got to look for other things to look forward to. We're thinking about 2025. We're thinking about the future. D. Winters very much looking like a part of that future, and a positive one. And now the fact that, Devondre Campbell not a part of the picture, I think makes way for D. Winters getting that opportunity. And so that's the good thing. And yeah, like he was pretty good in coverage, just 35 yards allowed on 6 receptions, pass breakup as well. So it's nice to just see someone who's, flying all over the field. I think that embodies the kind of guys that you want on defense. And D. Winters has shown that, right? So I think the more playing time that he gets, the quicker his recognition is going to be on certain plays, then he's going to be able to play even faster. Like, we've seen how so many of these guys like Warner, Greenlaw have started. And so I feel like Winters could be on a similar trajectory if he's able to get the mental side, the film study side of his game up. And yeah, I'm excited to see what else we could see from D. Winters in these remaining 2 games, now that, he's going to have an expanded role. So excited for that. Yeah. All right. We got him on this list here. So anyone else that you want to give flowers to? Cause like I said, that was mine, D. Winters, but yeah, we'll put him on the nomination list. For 1 second, let me just put up our nominees here. We got Deebo Samuel. We got George Kittle. We've got D. Winters. Who gave you the biggest silver lining in the 49ers Week 16 game against the Dolphins? Let us know in the live chat who you want to vote for 49K Player of the Week. So you don't have any flowers, Weston?
No. Okay. I think I was fringe, not cringe, with D as well. But the more I thought about it, just the more that, like, forward thinking, we're going to talk a lot about what the future holds. And I feel very much that he's part of the future of this team. And I believe passionately he should be a contributing factor on this team go forward.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't this team deserve flowers. No, they also don't deserve Toyotas.
Coal for Christmas. Everybody gets coal for Christmas.
But we try to find some positivity wherever we can. So that's all. All right, so you guys continue voting in the comments, but for now, we got someone to put on notice. I mean, at least I do, Weston, and maybe you're thinking about the same things that I am. But the title of the show is Hard Lessons Learned, and we already talked about the 49ers offensive line, the philosophy in that. I want to go back to some stats from the offensive line, pressures given up against the Dolphins in this game. Jake Brendel gave up 4 pressures. He also allowed a sack. Colton McKivitz gave up 3 pressures. Jalen Moore 2, 1 sack allowed. Dominic Pooney 2, Spencer Burford 2, Nick Sakel 1, Aaron Banks 0. But I find that one hard to believe as well. But I take it for what it is, I guess. So that's one. As far as the other part that I kind of wanted to discuss, and what I really want to give notice to, is Jake Moody. And it's not the first time that we've put him on notice on this show, but it's reaching a breaking point, Weston. So I think we got to revisit the conversation, because yesterday he missed a 40-some yard kick. Usually, that's a pretty easy make for a kicker, certainly one that was drafted in the 3rd round. I'd expect a 40-yarder to be made, and it wasn't, right? And when you think about the fact that this game was pretty close, there were a lot of field goals, kicked by both teams in this game. And sometimes that's the difference in this one.
Yep.
Ultimately, it didn't end up being the only difference, but I'm just tired of seeing Jake Moody miss kicks.
Yeah.
And we're past the point of making excuses for him. I think at this point, the sample size is enough. It's troubling. It's inexcusable. In 2023, his kick rate was 81.8%, his field goal make rate. That was 22nd in the league. And 80%, you're like, okay, fine. Like, he's a rookie, under a lot of pressure. All right, let's give him another chance. Let's see what he does in 2024. He's worse this season, 78.6% field goal rate this year. That ranks 28th among 32 kickers this season. So, or probably more kickers, but yeah, he now ranks 25th out of 29 qualifying kickers with an EPA per kick of negative 0.11. That's bad, by the way, and a field goal rate of 77%. Now 8 of 15 overall and 2 of 9 from 40 plus yards in road games this season. Like, again, I expect like 40 yarders to be made, and you're 2 of 9, 40-yard plus. That's you just can't go on like that.
It's 2024. I expect 50 yarders to get made unless we're outdoors in the snow, in the wind. They're having serious conversations about narrowing the goalposts and doing certain things because 50 yarders have become too automatic, right? Like, and we're sitting here saying 40 yards isn't automatic. It's your job. All right. I'm going to lead by saying, because this is 2 on my list, but I'll lead by saying none of this is going to happen. But what should happen is he is not on the team. I know what you invested. I know what the contract's going to be. I know what you lose, but I think this is where an opportunity exists for Kyle Shanahan to gain a little bit more credibility with his own team, to gain a little bit more credibility in the media, in the world, in the sense of like, made a mistake, shouldn't have drafted, forget it. I don't care if draft a kicker first, second, third round. It just shouldn't have been this guy, right? Based on the results or whenever you drafted with him, you got to cut it. You got to cut the bait and you got to go. My gut tells me he probably gets another year, which is like acidine to me. But when if you watched the game last night and you see this dude, Brandon Aubrey, right? Booming 58 yarders like they're nothing. And this dude, undrafted guy, right? Like, the talent that is required for that position is elsewhere. That doesn't require that level of draft capital. But I think there is an opportunity here for Kyle. It's made a mistake. We saw a guy that was really good in college, big leg. We were really excited about him. We knew we lost Robbie Gould, who's Mr. Consistency for us. It was an opportunity to fill one of the few gaps that they had at the time. It just hasn't worked out. And when it doesn't work out, I need you to be aggressive like you've been with moving on from Trey Lance and going to Brock and you just got to admit the mistake and go, but they won't. But they should. But they won't. Like I said, I led with they won't do this, but they should.
You don't think they will?
I don't think they will. I think there's still too much pride. I watched his reaction.
Okay.
I saw his reaction.
There was the clip of
Kyle have that
Kyle
reaction
Shanahan
all the time over a drop pass, over whatever. You know what I mean? And then you still go out and get the guy 12 touches the next game.
So here's my thing, and this is why I was saying that I think this is a lesson learned for the 49ers. You overvalued the kicking position
for sure.
You effed around and you drafted a kicker in the 3rd round.
Yeah.
After the many lessons by other teams prior to that usually does not go well for whatever reason, right? So now I think, and that's the worst part about the way that he's performing. It's like you have to admit a big mistake, and I think sometimes, recently at least, I think this team has been better about admitting those mistakes earlier. Like, think about Cam Latu. Like, think about, I don't know, probably forgetting about some guys right now. But this isn't just another one of those that they need to admit that they messed up on. So, and I do think Kyle is at his breaking point, not just because of, him throwing the tablet, but also because of his response after the game, I think was very telling, even in moments where Kyle has looked frustrated at Moody missing a kick, even in moments that he's made misses and it's been part of the reason that they've lost. Yeah, thank you, Throwback, for all the other examples, Drake Jackson, Ambry Thomas. Yeah, and there were definitely more than one. But even in all those moments, like I feel like Kyle Shanahan still had a positive tone regarding Moody and like still having confidence in him publicly, which I think they needed to do, But now you have 2 games left in the season. There isn't anything else to play for. You don't have to preserve his confidence for any reason, and maybe he's just letting that show at this point. His frustration has, I think, reached a boiling point, and now I think if Kyle is over it, and we know Kyle makes the ultimate decisions on the 53-man roster, if he's over it, I think it's done. And I don't know if that means they cut him. At the very, very least, Weston, if they keep him, I think they bring a very strong kicker in the offseason to compete with him. And I don't think this time they would hesitate to keep that kicker over Moody if there's any can you have a kicker competition? Yes, absolutely. I do think that's something that they would do if they elect to keep him beyond this season.
So here's I hope they do have a kicking competition. I hope it starts literally after Christmas, right? Like, let's get this thing rolling right away. I am done with Jake Moody. I'm done with Jake Moody because he's caused me so much aggravation around the Brock Purdy argument. We sit here and say about, hey, he's got no come from behind wins and things of that nature, or fourth quarter wins. The opportunities have been there, but the wins don't all come with scoring a touchdown on the final drive. Sometimes the quarterback just needs to do enough, right, to get you down the field in that fourth quarter. Like there's been opportunities that have been there. Here's the issue. How we have known how bad the special teams have been just in general for how long now? Nothing gets done, right? Nothing gets done. Nothing gets done about it. So you can't just be frustrated with Jake Moody. We could be frustrated about all things special teams, San Francisco 49ers related for the last few years. And then walking out of this disaster of a season for all intents and purposes, that's what it is. Are you really prioritizing is the kicker the area of focus? Probably not. It feels like it's one of those things that gets swept under the rug and said, I'll deal with it probably too late when all is said and done. That's just what it feels like. And that's just me studying Kyle Shanahan and San Francisco 49er behavior since 2017 when he's taken over. I just don't, I don't care how frustrated he look. I just don't think the hole's big enough for him to see it yet.
In this comment from 49ers Throwback says, makes no damn sense to overvalue, kickers if Kyle doesn't value special teams. Just saying. I agree. That's the baffling thing. Like, they do overvalue kickers, and I think it's because since Kyle has been with the Niners, they've had a very strong kicker the entire time. So I think Kyle felt like he needed that in order to get that. He needed to get one in the third round, I guess.
Apparently.
So I think there was some panic there of like Robbie Gould, we don't have him anymore, so we still need a strong kicker kind of thing. And it doesn't make sense because there's this crazy complacency with special teams, and Kyle has said out loud in a presser that not verbatim, but he's pretty much said he doesn't need the special teams to be good. He just needs them to be decent, more or less is what he has said, which that explains a whole lot. That explains everything that we're seeing from special teams. I think you need a clean house on special teams. I think Brian Schneider needs to go. I think Jake Moody needs 100%. To go. I think Mitch Wishnowsky overpaid at this point. You have Pat O'Donnell, who's been a better punter, since Wishnowsky has exited with injuries. So,
Tabor Pepper, he can go too. If I know our long snapper's name, I think that's actually a problem. right? Like would you agree? Like I find that to be a problem. I don't know. No offense to Tabor Pepper. I'm just saying I know your name. And I don't want to. Like that's like the one player on the team that nobody has ever heard of. But we know ours like in and out. I don't get it.
That's funny. It's true. All right. So who do you want to vote for 49K player of the week here?
I'm gonna go with Debo. I'm gonna stand on business. Or what did he say to Moody?
Lock in?
I'm locking in. Lock it in on Debo. Lock it in.
I was actually surprised by this, and thank you to everyone that voted in the chat. But like there was most of the votes came for Kittle, and I'm also voting Weston for Debo because I do think he had the better performance statistically. And while, I am frustrated by the fact that it came this late in the season and, after everything that happened, but, I gotta, give it where it's due. So I'm going with Debo, but even still, George Kittle is your 49K player of the week for week 16. The people have spoken, and
he is the people's tight end, and they have spoken for the people.
Hey, there we go. Makes sense. But all right, I appreciate everyone that tuned in. Like this is one of the best like live chats in a while. So I really appreciate all of you. You kept it popping the whole way through. And there is Monday Night Football going on right now. So you could have been watching that, but you're here joining us to vent about the 49ers. So that, I think, says a lot about, this fan base and, everyone that tunes in. Appreciate all of you. And, yeah, it's Christmas around the corner. So I hope that all of you, enjoy that with your families. And we get football this Christmas as well. So that should be fun. Show schedule is going to be different this week. Not doing bully ball tomorrow. Not doing a show on Wednesday, obviously. So Thursday TBD. So I'll let you guys know. Definitely will be doing my preview show on Friday. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the holidays. Someone asked me to do a Nick Bosa impression, so I'll send us off with that. Nick Bosa wishes all of you a Merry Christmas, and the season hasn't gone the way that we all hoped, but hope it doesn't ruin your holiday. Appreciate all of you. So with that, make sure you guys like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Audio listeners, leave a rating, leave a review. Appreciate all of you, like I said. But for now, from me, from Weston, have a good rest of your Monday and a happy holiday.
Merry Christmas.